The Green Tide of Despair. Be Careful, Little Eyes. Part 1. In the shadow of the collapsed Hab spire, Senior Hab Manager Elric Davros clutched his makeshift flamer, a fusion of scavenged promethium tanks and coolant pipes. He questioned what he had ever done to deserve this hell on earth he currently faced. He had always tried to honor the Emperor of mankind. He treated those workers under him with kindness and compassion when he could, and showed them as much leniency as allowed by the law when he could not. He knew many of them by name, but even these actions did little to spare him and his family from the hell that had become their home. Turning back towards his family, he saw the two smaller outlines of those he held most dear. His dark-haired wife, Myra, huddled nearby, wrapping their blonde-haired and green-eyed daughter Kira's. The sickly green miasma that had consumed their hive city now crept through the rubble towards them, carrying the nauseating sweet scent of decay. "They're coming again," Elric whispered, his voice raw from breathing the corrupted air, while in the distance distorted shapes shambled through the fog. Former neighbors and colleagues, now swollen with pustules and mumbling praises to their new plague, God giggled and shuffled their way up the road. Mira pulled Kira closer. The Administratum said reinforcements would arrive 3 days ago. "The Administratum lies," Elric replied bitterly, "or they're all dead." As he spoke, Elric readied himself for the upcoming clash, igniting the combustion flame at the end of his torch, muttering a prayer to the Emperor for guidance and protection for his family. Elric slowly began to squeeze the trigger as Robert, a fellow Hab worker, and one he had spoken with in limited capacity, giggled and wheezed his way within mere feet of the huddled family. However, before he could pull the trigger, the thundering sound of bolter fire echoed through the ruins, loud, distinctive, and impossible to mistake for any Hab worker that had witnessed the death of a mutant family or been unfortunate enough to be near a firefight between a local hive gang and the Adeptus Arbates. Yet the sound caused hope to flutter within the heart of Elric. The sound meant peace and protection to those loyal to the Emperor, as well as the presence of trained warriors still within the hive. With the bolter round came a wet pop as Robert's head exploded in a shower of red and black ichor and brain matter. The body took 2 steps forward even after the removal of its central nervous system before crashing to the ground with a dull thud. Other shots rang out in controlled bursts, each burst laying low 2 to 3 stumbling figures in an impressive and terrifying burst of blood and black gore. As the final body fell, a single, hulking figure emerged from the green vapor that swirled all around them, his armor the deep green of a verdant forest, trimmed with the orange-red of volcanic flame. The Space Marine stood nearly 3 meters tall, his ceramite plate scorched and pitted, but unbowed. Upon his pauldroned shoulder, the insignia of a drake's head gleamed despite the filth around them. His helmet was clipped upon his hip, dented and battered, and inside his charcoal-black skin burned 2 red and flaming eyes. The sight instilled such fear and terror upon the family that Mira held Kira and attempted to shield her from the sight as Elric's finger began to shake upon the trigger of his flamer. As the hulking Space Marine approached, he either did not notice Elric's shaking finger or simply did not care. His mouth open and words flowed over them like the trembling bass notes of an erupting volcano. "Citizens of the Imperium, you have done well to make it this far. I am Brother Pyriel of the Salamanders chapter. The Emperor protects. Come with me if you want to live. The Salamanders have come to bring about this planet's redemption." He holstered his bolt gun and pulled a massive flamer off of his back before taking one last look at the family and then walking deeper into the city, towards the spaceport and the most populated parts of the plagued city. With little other choice, Elric and his family followed. The next hours of survival blurred together in a tapestry of fights between Elric, the Salamander, Pyriel, and the servants of Nurgle, the chaos god of plague. The city was dying, but with every wave of enemies, the flamers of both Elric and Pyriel scorched the flesh of the dead and diseased, until only ash remained. Between sprays of promethium, the group encountered other survivors, but all shrunk under the gaze of Pyriel, and refused to join the group either out of fear of the Emperor's warrior, or due to hidden spots of disease under clothing spun tightly around malnourished bodies. After one particularly large group of survivors gave the A large birth, Elric noted, regardless of intent, the Manufactorum district still has pockets of resistance. They had gathered in an abandoned shrine to the Emperor. However, the building had fallen into disrepair during the spread of Nurgle's disease. Dark spots of mold and disease spores marred the visage of the Emperor, while others had been burnt by las gun rounds. Mira was tending to Kira, braiding the girl's hair, a small ritual of normalcy they maintained even as the world collapsed around them. The foreman's militia might still be holding out there. Brother Pyriel stood near the entrance, his massive form silhouetted against the sickly green light filtering through the broken, stained glass. "The Manufactorum is lost," he said simply. "I passed through it before finding you. Nothing remains but corruption." "Surely not everyone," Elric began. "Everyone," the Space Marine replied, his voice heavy with finality. That night, as they prepared to sleep, Kira couldn't stop shivering, despite the relative warmth of their hideout. Mira wrapped her arms around her daughter, humming an old lullaby from their home world. "Will we ever go home again, Mama?" Kira whispered. Mira exchanged glances with Elric over their daughter's head. "The Emperor will guide us home, sweetheart," she said, choosing hope over truth. Elric added another piece of broken furniture to their small fire. "And now we have one of the Emperor's own warriors watching over us. That's better protection than the entire PDF had, isn't it?" Kira nodded, her eyes drifting toward Pyriel, who maintained his vigil by the entrance. "He's so big," she whispered. "Do you think he gets scared, too?" "The Space Marines know no fear," Elric recited the common saying, even as he gazed at the hulking figure in green armor. The following day, they encountered the first group of survivors who were interested in talking about the present state of the planet and the spread of corruption each group had encountered. The group was made up of 7 factory workers, led by a grizzled overseer named Hayden. The man's face was a map of old scars, now joined by fresh cuts from recent fighting. "Throne be praised!" Hayden exclaimed when he saw Brother Pyriel. "Anastartes, we might actually survive this nightmare." After exchanging information about the rising numbers of infected and plague forces of the great enemy, they decided to join forces would provide both groups the greatest opportunity to survive. They would begin making their way toward the eastern quarter, where rumors suggested an Imperial Guard regiment had established a defensive position in desperate need of reinforcements, but they had food and medical supplies. As they rested in the shell of a collapsed administratum building, Elric found himself speaking with Jana, a young machinist from Hayden's group. "How long have you been running?" he asked her. "Since the first green rain," she replied, her eyes haunted. "It fell for 3 days. Those it touched changed. My entire hive block, all at once." She glanced toward where Kira was helping distribute some of the rations the factory workers were kind enough to share amongst all in their new group. "You're lucky to have kept your family together." Elric followed her gaze. Mira was showing Kira how to properly divide the meager food, making it into a lesson rather than a burden. Even in this hell, his wife found ways to nurture their daughter's growth. "Yes," he agreed quietly. "I am." The eastern quarter proved to be another false hope. They found the Imperial Guard position overrun, the regimental banner now hosting writhing maggots the size of a man's arm. The sight of it broke something in Hayden's group. "We're all going to die here," whispered Thale, one of the younger workers. "The Emperor has abandoned this world." "Watch your tongue," warned Brother Pyriel, his voice like distant thunder. "The Emperor protects those who keep the creed." Where was his protection for them? Thale gestured wildly at the desecrated guard position, his voice rising hysterically. Where was... He never finished. A strangled gasp escaped his lips as he clutched his throat. Before anyone could react, his skin began to mottle and swell, turning a sickly shade of green. "Back!" roared Pyriel, pushing the civilians away with one massive arm, while drawing his bolt pistol with the other. "No, please," Thale begged, his voice already changing, bubbling through lips that were dissolving into pus. "Help me! I didn't mean—" The bolt round took him cleanly through the head, an act of mercy as much as necessity. Mira covered Kira's eyes, but couldn't shield her from the sound. The girl trembled against her mother, but didn't cry out. "How?" Hayden asked, his face ashen. He wasn't wounded. He wasn't exposed. "The corruption takes many forms," Pyriel replied grimly. "Some physical, some spiritual. Doubt and despair are pathways for the plague god's influence." He sheathed his bolt pistol. His eyes flashed red with rage, but at what the group could not tell. Was it the anger of a fallen member of their group, or anger at the corruption that stalked each of them? That night they made camp in a merchant storehouse. The mood was somber. Kira sat between her parents, picking listlessly at her ration bar. "Are we going to end up like Thale?" she finally asked in a small voice. Elric and Mira exchanged glances, the question they'd both been avoiding now laid bare by their child's directness. "No, sweetheart," Elric said firmly. "We won't." "How can you be sure?" Mira stroked her daughter's hair. "Because we have faith in the Emperor, and in each other. And now we have Brother Pyriel to protect us." Kira nodded slowly. "I had a dream last night," she confessed, "about a beautiful garden where everything was rotting, but everyone was smiling. They wanted me to come play." Elric felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Mira's face had gone pale. Before either could respond, Brother Pyriel approached and knelt before Kira. Even kneeling, he towered over the family. "Listen carefully, little one," the Space Marine said, his voice gentler than they had heard before. "The enemies we face do not just corrupt the body. They seek to corrupt the mind and soul. These dreams are one of their many weapons. When they come again, you must reject them." "How?" Kira asked. "Recite the Litany of Protection," he instructed. "Do you know it?" Kira shook her head. "I will teach you," Pyriel said, and began to recite words in High Gothic, having Kira repeat them phrase by phrase. The ancient prayer seemed to bring a small measure of peace to the frightened child. Elric watched in wonder. I didn't expect a Space Marine to have such patience for teaching prayers to children. "The sons of Vulcan remember that those we protect are not just bodies to be shielded, but souls to be saved," Pyriel replied. "This is especially true of the young, who carry the future." The following days brought new horrors. 2 more of Hayden's group succumbed to the plague. One morning, Janus simply didn't wake up, his sleeping form already hosting a garden of fungi that sprouted from his eye sockets. The other, Marek, slipped away during a rest period and was later found prostrating himself before a makeshift shrine of rotting corpses. Pyriel granted him the Emperor's mercy before he could fully transform. Their group now numbered 7. Elric, Myra, Kira, brother Pyriel, Hedin, Jana, and a silent tech worker named Grell, who hadn't spoken since they found him. They were crossing a processing district when the plague bearers found them, bloated, pustulent creatures that had once been human, but now served as vessels for Nurgle's corruption. Dozens shambled from the mist, their distended bellies split open with loops of intestine dragging behind them. The stench alone was nearly overwhelming. "Defensive formation!" Pyriel commanded, igniting his flamer. Elric and Hedin positioned themselves to protect the others, their scavenged weapons seeming pathetically inadequate against the horde. Mira clutched Kira close, whispering the litany Pyriel had taught them. The battle was brief, but intense. Pyriel's flamer carved burning paths through the plague bearers, while Elric and Hedin picked off stragglers with carefully aimed shots. It seemed they might prevail until a new horror emerged from the fog. A bloated, fly-covered monstrosity thrice the size of a normal man, with a single baleful eye and a maw filled with needle-like teeth. Diseased wings vibrated as it came at the group. "Plague drone!" Pyriel shouted. "Fall back!" But it was too late for Hedin. The creature surged forward with unexpected speed, seizing the overseer in a massive, clawed hand. Hedin screamed as he was lifted high, his body already beginning to dissolve where the creature's corrupted flesh touched his. Elric fired desperately at the monster, but his last bolt seemed to have no effect. Pyriel roared a battle cry and charged, but even the Space Marine's might wasn't enough to save Hedin. Once the creature recognized the Space Marine's charge, it dragged Hedin screaming into the air before they vanished into the fog. With its departure, an eerie silence fell over the landscape as the group attempted to regain their breath. "We must move," Pyriel ordered. "More will come." "What about Hedin?" Jana asked, her voice breaking. "Pray for his soul," Pyriel replied grimly. "His body is lost to us." Elric found himself supporting Mira, who had gone pale with shock. Kira walked alongside them in silence, her small face set in an expression no child should ever wear, the face of someone who had seen too much horror to process. "We should rest," Elric suggested, when they'd put some distance between themselves and the processing district. "No," Mira said suddenly, her voice stronger than expected. "We keep moving." She knelt before Kira, checking her over with quick, efficient movements. "Are you hurt anywhere, little star?" Kira shook her head. "I'm okay, Mama. I remembered the prayer the whole time." Mira managed a smile, touching her forehead to her daughter's. "That's my brave girl." They found temporary sanctuary in the ruins of a skolum, its reinforced walls still largely intact. Jana discovered a small cache of supplies in what had once been the headmaster's office: clean water, medical supplies, and even a few pieces of dried fruit that brought tears to Kira's eyes when she tasted them. As night fell, the green-tinged clouds parted briefly to reveal a sliver of the moon. Elric and Mira sat close together, watching as Pyriel showed Kira how to clean and maintain a las gun. "He's good with her," Mira observed quietly. Elric nodded. "I never expected a space marine to be so, well, as heretical as it sounds, human." "The Salamanders are known for their compassion," Jana said, joining them. "My father served in the guard and fought alongside them once. He said they remember what they fight for better than most." Grell appeared silently beside them, startling the group. He pointed toward a far corner of the skolum grounds, then made a walking motion with his fingers. "What is it?" Elric asked, rising to his feet. The mute tech worker beckoned urgently, leading them to a small courtyard. There, half hidden by rubble, lay a woman clutching a bundle to her chest. Her breathing was labored, and even from a distance they could see the telltale green veins creeping up her neck. "Stay back," Elric warned. "Pyriel should examine her." But Mira was already moving forward, her medical training overriding caution. "She has a child," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. The woman looked up as they approached, fear giving way to desperate hope. "Please," she whispered, "not for me. For her." She pulled back the blanket to reveal an infant, perhaps 6 months old, miraculously untouched by the corruption consuming its mother. Mira knelt beside them, her experienced eyes assessing the situation. "How long have you been infected?" 2 days, the woman replied. "I've kept her away from my skin. Used the blanket as a barrier." Brother Pyriel arrived, his massive form casting long shadows in the dim light. The woman shrank back in terror until she registered the insignia on his armor. "A salamander," she breathed. "The Emperor does hear prayers." "What is your name, brave one?" Pyriel asked gently. "Lyra," she replied. "My daughter is Alia." A racking cough shook her frame, bringing up flecks of black-green phlegm. "Please take her! Save her!" Mira looked to Pyriel, a silent question in her eyes. "The child shows no signs of corruption," the Space Marine confirmed after examining her with a small Auspex device from his armor. "We'll care for her," Mira promised, carefully taking the infant from her mother's weakening grasp. Tears streamed down Lyra's face. "Thank you," she whispered. Then looking to Pyriel, "And now, the Emperor's mercy, if you would grant it." The Space Marine nodded solemnly. Elric took Myra and the infant away, while Janna led Kira back inside. Only Grell remained, standing as a silent witness, while Brother Pyriel administered the Emperor's final blessing with a single bolt round. Later, as they settled for the night, Mira cradled the infant while Kira watched with fascination. "She's so tiny," Kira marveled. "Was I ever that small?" "Smaller," Elric said, smiling at the memory. "You could fit in my 2 hands when you were born." "Can I help take care of her?" Kira asked eagerly. Mira nodded. "We'll all need to help. She's part of our family now." Elric watched his wife with the infant, a complex mixture of emotions washing over him. Pride at her compassion, fear for what adding a helpless infant to their group might mean, and something like hope, that they could still save something pure from this nightmare. "Family," he repeated softly. "Yes." For 2 days they remained at the Skolum, gathering strength and supplies for the journey ahead. The infant Alia proved remarkably resilient, accepting the improvised formula Janna concocted from their rations. Kira appointed herself the baby's protector, constantly checking on her and singing quiet songs she remembered from her own early childhood. "She's good with the little one," Janna remarked to Mira as they inventoried their medical supplies. "She always wanted a sibling," Mira replied, a shadow crossing her face. "We had planned before all this." Janna squeezed her arm in understanding. "Kira reminds me of my sister. The same determination. Where is your sister now?" Janna's expression closed. She was in the Eastern District when the first spores fell. No more needed to be said. On the morning of the 3rd day, Brother Pyriel announced they would move towards the spaceport. "My battle brothers will be attempting extraction within the next day at that location," he explained. "It is our best hope." The journey would take them through some of the most heavily infected areas of the hive city, but staying meant certain death as supplies dwindled. They packed what they could carry and set out as dawn broke through the perpetual green haze. Elric found himself walking alongside Pyriel as they navigated through the silent streets. "Brother Pyriel," he began hesitantly, I've been meaning to ask, how did you become separated from your chapter? The Space Marine was silent for so long that Elric thought he might have offended him. Finally, Pyriel spoke, his deep voice pitched low. Our strike cruiser, the Vulcan's Hammer, responded to the distress call from this world. Initial scans showed sporadic plague activity, but nothing to suggest a full-scale invasion. We deployed in standard formation, 3 squads, each targeting a strategic location. He paused. We were wrong. This was not a standard infection, but a coordinated assault. A plague hulk had secreted itself in orbit, masked by warp disturbances. What happened to your brothers? Ambushed. Separated. I was with the squad targeting the central medical facility when plague drones attacked in overwhelming numbers. Our position was slowly overrun. We made the spawn of chaos pay dearly for every inch, but without the ability to regroup or rearm amidst the battle taking place in orbit, we could not hold. Captain Nura ordered the surviving Salamanders to extract and regroup in orbit. Another pause. My transport was destroyed as it ascended. I was thrown clear but cut off. My fellow battle brothers were not so lucky. The 3 with me were killed in the crash. Shortly after the call for tactical withdrawal, the strike cruiser was forced to perform a warp jump under heavy attack, but not before my brothers sent out a planet-wide vox, planning to return by tomorrow. And you believe they will? Pyriel's helmeted gaze turned to Elric. The sons of Nocturne do not abandon their own, nor do we abandon those we have sworn to protect. They will return, whether I live to see it or not. The conviction in his voice gave Elric a renewed sense of hope. That afternoon, they encountered another survivor, a PDF sergeant named Halleck, half mad with thirst and fatigue. He claimed to have been part of a last-stand defense at the governor's palace before everyone turned on each other. Green veins, he muttered, eyes darting nervously. You'd see it on their necks first. Then they'd start talking about the gifts, the blessings. They shared water and rations with him, and he gradually became more coherent. When he saw Brother Pyriel, he dropped to his knees. Emperor be praised, he whispered. The legends speak true. Pyriel helped him to his feet. Save your strength, soldier. We have far to go. Halleck joined their group, his military training proving valuable as they navigated the increasingly dangerous terrain. Additionally, he formed an immediate bond with Grell, seeming to understand the mute tech worker's gestures intuitively. That night, as they camped in what had once been a transit hub, Halleck approached Elric and Mira. Your daughter, he said quietly. She's special, isn't she? Mira tensed. What do you mean? The other have spoken to me about her. About her. He paused as if searching for the right words before continuing. Ability to resist the plague's influence. Most children were the first to fall, their minds more susceptible to the whispers and vision of the rotting garden. But she's strong. She has faith, Elric replied guardedly. Halleck nodded. Keep her close. The enemy prizes such souls above all others, and will often not cease in his pursuit of them. The cryptic warning left them uneasy. Later, as Kira slept between them with baby Aaliyah nearby in a makeshift crib, Elric voiced his concerns to Mira. Do you think we can trust him? Mira watched the sleeping sergeant across the room. Brother Pyriel seems to. For now, that's enough. She shifted closer to Elric, her head resting on his shoulder in a rare moment of vulnerability. Do you remember the summer we spent in the upper hive, before Kira was born? The botanical gardens. Elric smiled at the memory. You wore that blue dress with the silver trim. And you sneezed through the entire afternoon because of the Pollensia blooms, she laughed softly. Worth every moment, he replied, squeezing her hand. When we reach the spaceport, when we're safe, we'll find a world with real gardens. Not the artificial kind. Real sun, real soil. I am sure I can utilize my skills as senior hab management to obtain a position that would enable us access to upper hive life. Mira's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Promise. By the throne, I promise. Morning brought new challenges. The transit hub had been compromised during the night, green spores now visibly floating in the air ducts. They departed quickly, Pyriel taking point while Halleck brought up the rear. They had covered perhaps 2 kilometers when Jana began to cough. At first, she tried to hide it, muffling the sound against her sleeve, but soon it became too violent to conceal. Pyriel ordered an immediate halt. "Show me," he commanded. Trembling, Jana pulled down the collar of her coverall. Green veins had begun to spread across her collarbone, reaching toward her throat. "When?" the Space Marine asked. "I noticed it this morning," she admitted. I hoped it might be something else." Mira stepped forward, professional medical detachment taking over. "How do you feel otherwise? Any fever? Disorientation?" "Just tired, and cold despite the heat." Elric saw the look that passed between Mira and Pyriel. They both knew what was coming. "We can't just execute her," Elric protested quietly to Pyriel. "She's still herself." "For now," the Space Marine replied, "but not for long." His hand slowly began to draw the bolt pistol from its sheath on his hip. It is better to save her soul from the taint of chaos instead of her body. Jana herself resolved the dilemma. "I know what happens next," she said with surprising calm. "I've seen it enough times. I won't become one of those things." She looked to Kira, who was watching with wide, frightened eyes. "And I won't put the little ones at risk." "Jana, please," Mira began. "No," Jana cut her off gently. "This is my choice, the only one I have left." She turned to Pyriel. "I'll leave the group. Once I'm out of sight, She took a shaky, mucus-filled breath. "I will commit my soul to the Emperor's protection." She motioned to the laspistol at her hip. "I will not miss. Save your bolt round for someone who needs it more, or better yet, the Emperor-forsaken bodies of our enemies." Elric felt a lump in his throat. Beside him, Kira broke free and ran to Jana, throwing her arms around the infected woman's waist. "Don't go," Kira pleaded. "Brother Pyriel can fix you, or Mama can. They're both so smart." Jana carefully disentangled herself, avoiding direct skin contact. "Some things can't be fixed, little one. But you remember me, okay? Remember that I wasn't afraid at the end?" With that, she shouldered her pack and walked away, not looking back. Kira would have followed, but Elric caught her, lifting her into his arms despite her protests. "Let me go! We can't just let her leave." "Kira," Mira said firmly, taking her daughter's tear-streaked face in her hands. "This is Jaina's choice. We must respect it. It's not fair." "No," Elric agreed, his own voice thick with emotion. "It's not fair at all." They watched until Jana disappeared around a corner. A couple minutes later they heard a single last shot echo through the ruins. Kira buried her face against Elric's chest and wept. The loss of Jana cast a pall over the group. They moved in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Even baby Aaliyah seemed subdued, making little noise as Mira carried her. As they approached the industrial sector that bordered the spaceport, the signs of corruption grew more pronounced. Writhing masses of putrescent flesh clung to buildings, pulsing with unnatural life. The air itself felt thick and greasy, carrying whispers at the edge of hearing. "Stay close," Pyriel warned. "We are entering territory fully claimed by the enemy. The rot will call to you, but you cannot give it an ear. It will take your body in mere moments if you open your mind and soul to the taint that lives here." Halleck moved up to walk alongside the Space Marine, his las gun held ready. "Something's watching us," he muttered. "I can feel it." Grell made a series of urgent hand gestures, pointing toward a processing plant to their right. "Movement," Halleck translated. "Multiple contacts." They barely had time to take cover before the attack came. Not from plague zombies or bearers this time, but from something far worse. Corrupted servitors, their augmetic parts fused with pulsating organic matter, burst from the processing plant. Their mechanical limbs moved with precision, while their flesh components dripped with contagion. "Defensive positions!" Pyriel roared, his bolter already firing. Elric pushed Myra and the children behind a fallen ferrocrete barrier, then took position with his lasgun. Halleck and Grell spread out, creating a crossfire zone. The battle was fierce but brief. The servitors were deadly but predictable in their movements. When it was over, 5 corrupted machines lay destroyed, their tainted components still twitching. "Everyone unharmed?" Pyriel asked, scanning the area for additional threats. "Grell's hit," Halleck reported, supporting the tech worker who clutched his side where a servitor's blade had sliced through his coverall. Mira handed Aaliyah to Kira and rushed to examine the wound. "It's not deep, but—" She trailed off as she saw the green tinge already spreading from the cut edges. Grell saw it too. His eyes widened in understanding, then acceptance. He made a series of gestures to Halleck. "He says to leave him," Halleck translated reluctantly. "Says he'll buy us time." "No more sacrifices," Elric protested. But Grell was insistent, his gestures becoming more emphatic. He says he was already dying," Halleck continued. "Terminal rad poisoning from the reactor breach before the invasion. That's why he doesn't speak. His Mechanicus-augmented vocal cords are damaged." Brother Pyriel stepped forward, studying Grell closely. "You wish to die with purpose," he stated rather than asked. Grell nodded firmly. "Then I honor your choice, warrior," the Space Marine said formally. "Your sacrifice will be remembered." They left Grell with an extra power pack for his lasgun. Mira attempted to leave him with some of their scant medical supplies, but Grell refused with a raised palm before taking up position on a walkway that overlooked the approach to the processing plant, a sentry ensuring no corruption would follow their path while he still lived. As they departed, Mira looked up at Pyriel. How much farther to the spaceport? Her voice trembled, but she did not give fully into her pain and despair. To do so in this place would spell her doom. 3 kilometers, Pyriel replied, but the most dangerous stretch lies ahead. The Nurgle touched were everywhere. Bloated plague-bearers lumbered through the streets, their distended bellies split open with loops of intestine dragging behind them. Clouds of flies followed in their wake, each insect carrying 100 lethal infections. Brother Pyriel waded through them like a furnace through ice, his flamer purging the unclean with righteous fire, his combat knife, the size of a standard human's sword, cleaving through corrupted flesh when enemies drew too close. Elric had once been a PDF officer, before utilizing relationships he had obtained to start working as a manufacturer manager. He showed surprising skill with the las pistol Pyriel had given him, covering their flanks as the Space Marine carved a path forward. Halleck proved his worth as well, his military training evident in every precise shot. He and Elric worked in tandem, protecting Mira, who carried both children through the most dangerous zones. "The Emperor protects," Kira whispered with each crack of weapons fire, clutching her drake scale necklace that Pyriel had given her for courage. They had nearly reached the medical facility that marked the border of the spaceport district when disaster struck. A bloated plague drone burst through a wall, its wings buzzing with filth and decay. Pyriel spun to engage it, but in that moment, a lurking Nurgling, a diminutive demon no larger than a child, leapt at Kira from hiding. Mira reacted without hesitation. She twisted her body, shielding both children with herself. The Nurgling's poisoned claws raked across her back as Halleck's las gunfire cut it down mid-leap. "Mira!" Elric screamed. Pyriel decapitated the plague drone with a single swing, then immolated the fallen Nurgling with a controlled burst from his flamer. But it was too late. The infection was already spreading across Mira's skin, angry red welts rising and turning a sickly green. Halleck helped Elric support Mira, while Pyriel secured the area. Kira stood frozen in shock, still clutching baby Aaliyah protectively. "How bad?" Elric asked, his voice breaking. Mira tried to smile through her pain. "Bad enough," she whispered. "But the children are safe. That's what matters." "You know what happens now," Mira whispered that night, as they rested in an abandoned chapel to the Emperor. Kira had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from crying, with baby Aaliyah nestled beside her. Elric couldn't speak, his grief a physical weight on his chest. Brother Pyriel knelt beside them, his massive frame somehow gentle in its movement. "Your sacrifice will be remembered, Mira Davros. Few mortals show such courage in the face of the great enemy. Promise me you'll get them to safety," she said, her eyes already clouding with fever. "Both of them." "By the Promethean Creed, I swear it," the Space Marine replied. "And Elric," she added, reaching for her husband's hand. "Remember your promise. Gardens for Kira, real ones." He wanted to take her hand, to feel her skin against his one last time. But to do so risked spreading the infection and leaving both children without parents. Instead, he had to settle for a singular statement from behind tear-filled eyes. "I will, I swear it." Halleck stood vigil by the chapel door, giving the family their privacy. When he next looked over, he saw Mira whispering something to Brother Pyriel, who nodded solemnly. When morning came, Pyriel performed the Emperor's mercy with his bolt pistol. Elric could not watch, but he heard the single shot echo through the chapel. Kira wept silently against his chest, while Aaliyah, sensing the mood, whimpered softly. "We cannot bury her," Pyriel said gently. "The corruption would spread." "I know," Elric replied. "Purify the body with flame. It's what she would want." As they continued their journey, Elric noticed the salamander occasionally looking back at them with an expression that, on a normal human, might have been concern. He had heard space marines were cold, unfeeling weapons of the Emperor, living weapons with no capacity for human connection. Yet this warrior seemed different, if not human, at least understanding of human emotions. This observation fought against the pain that tore at Elric's soul as they continued towards to spaceport and the final steps of their journey. End of Part 1. If you have enjoyed this story, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. The more this channel grows, the higher quality of stories that can be produced as well as more frequent uploads. The Emperor protects.